This is Prithu. He is a new employee of the UK National Health Service. He is attending his information security induction, specifically relating to patient information. The policies he will see today follow the British Medical Association model. Welcome to your introductory briefing on the information security policy in place at this practice. The policies we will be explaining to you today primarily aim to ensure that confidentiality and integrity of patient records. Successful implementation of this policy is extremely important, as patients have a legal right to privacy under the Data Protection Act. This is critical in the medical profession, as we may store very personal and sensitive patient information. The threats we need to guard against include inaccurate amendments to, or false manipulation of, patient data, and public access to patient records, which could not only damage the patient but severely damage the reputation of the NHS. This model is centred around 9 fundamental principles, which we shall outline to you today at this briefing. Access control.
What? So I can't look at my friend's personal health record?
No, the whole point of this control is to ensure that personal records can only be viewed by eligible persons or people responsible who are allowed to have access to this data, not just every employee here.
Okay.
Record opening. Here is an example. If a patient is referred to a specialist in another surgery by their GP, the specialist needs to have access to the patient's information, such as allergy information. However, the specialist should only have access to relevant records. Some sensitive information may not be required, and the patient may not be happy with this being shared. Control.
But Daria, how do you decide who is responsible?
Oh, this might be either patient's GP or the consultant who is responsible for the hospital department.
Okay.
Consent and notification.
So Brad, what happens in an emergency? Should we ask an unconscious person for their consent?
Fabulous point, Preeti. When information is shared in emergency circumstances, a notice must be generated and sent to the patient. This is the GP's responsibility. If they merely assume that the hospital would notify the patient, they'd be being seriously negligent. I'm sure you wouldn't be seriously negligent.
Persistence.
So Pooja, what does appropriate time mean?
These are rules on how long records must be kept, but it's completely subjective to the type of data in question, obviously. Most primary records must be kept for 8 years, but cancer records must be kept for a patient's lifetime. Genetic diseases may be kept even longer.
Attribution. This is so that breaches of confidence can be traced, and deliberate destruction of incriminating material can be attributed. Information flow. If a patient has 2 separate records with different access control lists, then we can only export information from the less to the more sensitive record without requiring patient's further consent. Aggregation control. Suppose a clinician is added to the access control list of millions of patients. This may make the clinician vulnerable to inducements or threats from illegal information brokers. Patients should be aware of such threats to their personal information, so it is important for them to be notified. A trusted computing base. There is high dependence on these computer systems. If they are subverted or contain bugs, then the security policy can be circumvented. It is not sufficient to rely on the assurances of equipment salesmen that their products are secure. These claims must be checked by a competent third party. In summary, thank you for attending this induction and for protecting patient data.